So today we're going to bring our attention to Rupert Spira. And Rupert Spira is an amazing person to place our attention on. He is an Advaita Vedanta teacher. And why I want to bring him up is because he is clearly experiencing a level of peace and wisdom and generosity that I think everybody kind of aspires to in some way in our own form. And so just his being and his countenance have a pretty strong transmission. But then he's also very poetic and very insightful and pretty clear for the level of heady stuff that he talks about. So he has a really wonderful YouTube channel, and he has a beautiful, beautiful expression of peace. There's so much to say. Honestly, I've been trying to do this video for a couple hours, which I've never actually had happen before. And this stuff is pretty heady. So like, who am I to try to spend 10 minutes giving an overview of a person who's magnificent and a philosophy that the greatest minds of thousands of years have talked about and explored. And so I'd like to start with a disclaimer that this is very much a snowflake on an iceberg. And please receive it as that. But I want to encourage you towards Rupert Spira's work because it's delightful. So let's start with Advaita Vedanta. He is an Advaita Vedanta teacher, which means non-dual God realization. So Vedanta is the end of the Vedas. The Vedas are millennia old texts in the Hindu tradition, all pointing to God consciousness. So Vedanta, end of the Vedas, means beyond the scripture into the experience. Advaita Vedanta means non-dual, non-dual. So the seeker and that which is sought are the same thing. So in the spirit of the ocean and the wave are the same thing. There's so much complexity, there's so much possibility in here. But if we can begin this conversation of a spiritual tradition that does not have man toiling at the ground, heaven up with gold things, and if you do this right, you might be able to get there. That is not the dynamic that's going on here. And I love that because, well, that's a whole nother story. Let's talk about Rupert Spira. Rupert Spira was a British potter, still is a potter, though I think that not as much, because he teaches so much, because his teachings are so in demand, because he's so great. But he studied with a guy named Francis Lucille, and had one of those moments where he said, I'm experiencing this and this in my life, and Francis Lucille did the who is experiencing it, and he was able to turn his attention inward and not just access the idea that it's possible, but could actually drop everything else. And here's the idea of that. I'm experiencing a stubbed toe. There's an eye, there's a physical sensation happening, but then there's an I who's aware of it. I'm experiencing a broken heart. There's a emotional content, and then there's an I that's aware of it. I'm experiencing a great idea. Who's the I? And so there are these, the physical level of activity, the mental level of activity, the emotional level of activity, but then there's this broader context in which it's all happening. And I don't know about you, but my sense of myself has remained pretty consistent from, I remember like coloring on the floor with a crib, like, and thinking, oh, I hope that it's peanut butter and jelly for lunch today. And now I have gray hair, but I still have the same like sense of this being who's experiencing this life. And what Advaita Vedanta and what happened to Rupert Spira, the turning inward of that inquiry and the recognition of I am awareness itself, is called direct path, right? Like, and he may have, I don't know, there's progressive path, which, you know, you do all those little steps, but then there's the whoosh, like, I used to believe in Santa Claus. Now I know I've been told Santa Claus isn't real. And it's not like I keep dipping back into believing in Santa Claus. And then in moments of clarity, I don't anymore. And I'm dipping back in. There's like that whole thing. It's like a moment and it's done. So, but this sense of I am, this sense of, one of the things that Rupert Spira says a lot is only awareness is aware. So the awareness I have of my stubbed toe and the awareness you have of the flowers you brought this, you know, the smell of the flowers you bought this afternoon, it's the same awareness, but having localized experiences, right? And that's, you know, have you heard teachers say like, we're all one? And you're like, yeah, kind of. That is, as I understand it, that's what we're talking about. We are all one because awareness is experiencing. Awareness is aware of everything. And all of these localized experiences are feeding in to awareness itself, which is pervasive and everyone has access to it. Not only that, but awareness is aware of, but unchanged by the events in any localized life. And the metaphor he uses here, which is, I think, fantastic, is the metaphor of the movie screen. So the movie screen is awareness, and our mental, emotional, physical experience is the movie. And so whatever it is, whatever the content of our life is the content of that movie. And it is playing up on this screen. But no matter how hot the fire blazes in the movie, the screen does not burn. And that is a very big deal. Because when you begin to identify as the screen, then you're not so terrified of the fire that's happening in the movie. And because awareness itself has the fullness of all experience ever as part of its knowing, as part of its, you know, the culmination of all awareness, that's where the right action, that's where inspiration, that's where, you know, the better angels of our nature start to have some application, that we're not just relying on the 52 years of experience I've had and the amount, you know, 7,000 books I've read, but 2 million years of evolution and infinite books, because awareness is aware and we all are sharing in that awareness. One of the things, oh, there's so much, there's so very much, but I'm not going to drive myself or you crazy trying to do it. So one of the things I love very much about his work is he says that truth, love, and beauty are three words, three names of the same reality, right? And it is this dynamic between the I am that is ever, you know, the evergreen, and then all of these changing bits, right? And we're trying to find some synchronicity. And in his work, truth, love, and beauty all met at the same time is the synchronicity. So, for example, he does retreats a lot, and those retreats, you know, his teaching, his words, his talks appeal to the truth aspect of the reality. And the Sangha, the people that come together, right? Like there is an earnestness and an altruism in people who are deeply into a spiritual path. And that is the love, right? And the support and the community. It appeals to that love name of the reality. And then he says he always tries to have them in especially beautiful places, and the inside especially beautiful, so that the physical perceiving reality is congruent with the teachings and the community and the physical experience, so that those things work together, that every aspect of the being is being met in this reality, and thereby can repattern some of the habits. Then we have these fragmented experiences that aren't integrated with that full self. Gosh, I hope that was clear. I'll post this and people can let me know. And if it needs a new one, I'll do a new one. 3 names for the same reality: truth, love, and beauty. Oh, I just love that. And the last thing that I'm gonna talk about is that he invites us to, and here it is, turn the light of our attention to the knowing with which we know our own experience. Right? So I think that that's so beautiful, because that knowing, that awareness, that right, it's this underlying pervasive reality. It was kind of funny. Somebody was trying to, ask him about God realization, and this is the thing, is people can ask him like any question, and there's like nary a raised eyebrow. Like he's so present and engaged and non-judgmental, right? And so someone's saying, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? And he's saying, well, it's this I am, right? This awareness itself, the knowing with which you know your own experience. And so it's underlying all experience. And the guy's like, well, it can't be that simple. And it was like, it's exactly that simple. And I tried to find that to link to it, because, and that's something that a lot of non-dual teachers will talk about. Like people have these expectations and ideas of what this pure awareness looks like, and those are just ideas. Like pure awareness is so utterly effervescent, that always changing, right? Like every moment is a new expression, and so every moment is going to be its own distinct isness of this moment, which then is just going to pour right into the next moment and be unfolding. And so you can't say, oh, and it looks like this when you get to the top of the hill. And this is the last thing I'll share about his teaching, and that I really respect and admire. So many teachings look towards some pinnacle experience, and kind of like you get there and, oh, I got there, and then like there's no worries anymore, and I don't know, they lived happily ever after, right? This is what we've been taught. And he is pretty clear of the ever newness of the experience of awareness in any present moment, which means it's going to look one way 1 minute and another way another minute. And that is the movie screen, allowing the next picture and the next picture and the next picture, and standing in witness to it, making it possible for it to happen and be experienced. But never clinging and um, never subject to being just one thing. So the last thing, I know I've said that like 3 times, but he says that suffering is a flag that you're limiting yourself to the body mind, and you know, offering the freedom to know ourselves as the experiencer. And that as we do that, everything changes. When the localized priorities of this experience and these desires shifts back into an experiencer that is open to the present moment and whatever the experience is, kind of moment agnostic, then the body is freed from the tyranny of the ego, and a new dynamic can begin to take place, where that limited self, you know, the Dalai Lama says that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that suffering comes from the belief that it should be some other way. And this awareness, the quality of awareness being open to all things as they are, is freeing for every aspect of experience. And I'll end with the thing that he says a lot, like back to this whole idea of a snowflake and an iceberg, you know, that any kind of conversation about this stuff is, oh, what's the word he uses? I can't think of the word he uses because it's really late, because I've been trying to do this and it's been just too big. But it's, you know, the words don't, everything is, oh, it's not a concession. Everything is a concession, because the paradoxical nature of awareness itself and its relationship with experience and our relationship and how we are in the world and experiencing the world and history and all of that stuff. There's a delicacy of awareness, knowing, and experience, and the relationship that none of these words kind of make sense. But if any of this was appealing to you at all, trust me, he does, you know, zillion times more compelling, more poetic, and certainly much clearer descriptions and explorations. But he is a teacher I value so much, and am just delighted if you hadn't heard of him and I get to be the person to introduce you. That's always such a privilege. But he's so well worth your time. And thank you for your attention again. Until next time, thank you very much.